Okay, so I need to tell you something. I have never finished a first-person shooter in my life. Like, ever. I've started a few, I've picked them up, I've played like the first 20 minutes, I've put them back down and gone. Yeah, that's not for me. I don't know what it is. Maybe the genre just never grabbed me, maybe I just never found the right one. So when I tell you that I played Mouse PI for hire from start to finish and couldn't put it down, I need you to understand the weight of that sentence. That's not a small thing for me. That's genuinely kind of a big deal. And the crazy part, it's a game about mice, detective mice in 1930s New York, where cheese is illegal. Yeah, we're doing this. Welcome back, I'm Dan. This is Dan2D Reviews, and today we are talking about Mouse PI for hire. Alright, let me give you the quick context before we get into it, because the story of this game is almost as interesting as the game itself. Mouse PI for Hire was made by a small Polish studio called Fumi Games, published by PlaySide Studios out of Australia. It came out April 16th, 2026 on basically everything: PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch 2 and PC, and I want you to know that this is their first major release. And somehow they landed Troy Baker to voice the main character. Troy Baker, the guy who voiced Joel in The Last of Us, Higgs in Death Stranding, Indiana Jones, that Troy Baker. He is in this mouse detective game and he sounds like he was born for this role. We'll get into that. The game got 95% positive reviews on Steam from over 3,500 people. PC Gamer, one of the biggest gaming publications in the world, called it, quote, the best shooter I've played in ages. PC Games and gave it a 9 out of 10. Metacritic user score sits at 8.4. For first game from a small Polish studio about cartoon mice, that is insane. Like, genuinely, who let them cook like this? Okay, so let me paint the picture for you, because I think the setting of this game deserves its own dedicated moment of appreciation. It is 1934, you're in a city called Mouseburg, and you guessed it, everyone is a mouse, or some kind of rodent. There are mice, there are rats, there are shrews, and shrews in this world are basically treated like second-class citizens. They are the minority. They used to have their own town called Shrew Thicket, which got destroyed, and now they live on the margins of Mouseburg with basically no rights and no protection, and the whole city knows it and doesn't care. So right off the bat, you've got this game that looks like a silly cartoon but is immediately doing something with social commentary and discrimination and systemic corruption. And then on top of that, and this is the part that got me, there is cheese prohibition. Yeah, cheese is illegal. Blue cheese and powdered cheese are basically treated as hard drugs. Melted cheese is moonshine, and the guys who smuggle it, they're called cheese leggers. I cannot explain to you why that is so funny and so perfect at the same time, but it just is. The whole world is built like this, and the art style matches every single bit of it. The whole game is in black and white, no color anywhere, just pure ink, deep blacks, bright whites, grey shadows. Everything moves in that classic rubber hose style. You know, that old school cartoon animation where limbs are like bendy tubes and everything squashes and stretches and bounces. Like Betty Boop, like old Mickey Mouse before Walt got respectable. It is beautiful. Like stop and stare, screenshot every 5 seconds, beautiful. So here is something I kept thinking about the entire time I was playing this game, and I want to talk about it because I feel like not enough people are saying it. This game really reminded me of Cuphead. Now, I know whenever anything has a 1930s cartoon aesthetic, people immediately go, oh, it is like Cuphead, but hear me out, because I mean it in every specific way. When you are traveling between locations in the game, between Jack's office, the bar, and all the different areas of Mouseburg, there is this little animated sequence where you see Jack in a car rolling through the city, and the way it is done, the way the world moves behind him, the way the whole thing is framed, it gives me the exact same feeling as moving across the overworld map in Cuphead. That same handcrafted charm, that same feeling of I can't believe this is actually moving and it looks like this. And then there is the spinach. If you pick up the spinach power up in this game, which is a Popeye reference and a perfect one, Jack's hands balloon up into these absolutely enormous cartoon fists. And when I tell you that, the way those hands animate, the way they transform and squash and stretch in that rubber hose style, it is the most Cuphead thing I have ever seen outside of actual Cuphead. The arms just go boom, like a balloon inflating, and then you're punching people with them, and it's incredible. So if you played Cuphead and fell in love with that era of art, this is the game for you. They are pulling from the same source material, just in completely different directions, and both of them absolutely nail it. Alright, let's talk story. And I'm going to do my best to keep the spoiler light because I genuinely think you should experience this yourself. You play as Jack Pepper, private investigator, former war hero, former cop, current gambling addict who owes money to basically everyone. He's got a tiny office next to a bar. He works cheap cases for barely enough cheese to get by. His name is already 10 out of 10. Jack Pepper. He gets contacted by a journalist named Wanda Fuller who gives him a case. Stage magician named Steve Bandel has vanished, disappeared right in the middle of his own performance. Jack takes the case because Jack needs the money, and then it spirals because it always spirals. What starts as a missing person case quickly connects to an attempted assassination of a politician, a series of missing shrews, the suspicious death of an actress, corrupt police officers, underground tunnels, a literal cult, a mad scientist, and yes, I said what I said, a submarine. There is a submarine boss fight, and I'm not going to say more than that. The game is built around these parallel cases that Jack is working simultaneously, and they slowly start bleeding into each other. And there is this moment near the end where Jack sits down with all the evidence and starts connecting the dots on his cork board, and it just clicks, like everything you have been doing for the whole game. All three cases, they all link back to one thing, and when that happened, I genuinely got chills. Real ones. The characters are also really well drawn. Tammy, the young mechanic who upgrades your weapons, has this lovely dynamic with Jack. He's been looking out for her since she was a kid, and you really felt it in the way they talk to each other. John Brown, the shrew who owns the bar, is quietly one of the most sympathetic characters in the whole game, and the villain, who I absolutely will not name, has a reveal that actually made me say, "Oh, come on," out loud in the good way. Troy Baker, by the way, does a Humphrey Bogart impression throughout this entire game, and it works. He sounds like he fell out of a 1940s film noir and landed in Mouseburg and just decided to stay. Okay, so I need to talk about this from my specific perspective as someone who has genuinely never played this type of game before, because I think it matters. Boomer shooters, for anyone who doesn't know, are games inspired by the old school FPS games from the 90s. Doom, Quake, fast movement, no regenerating health, secrets hidden in walls, just you and a pile of guns and a room full of enemies. It is a subgenre that's been making a comeback for a while now, with games like Ultra Kill and Dusk and Cultic building a real fan base. I had never properly played any of them. They always felt too fast, too overwhelming, like I'd missed some foundational knowledge that everyone else had. Mouse PI was my first one, and here is the thing, it is actually a great entry point if you are in my position. The movement opens up gradually. You start with a pistol and Jack's fist, and you learn the rhythm of the combat before the game starts throwing more complicated stuff at you. The normal difficulty is generous with health pickups, and crucially, there is always something to pull you forward. There is always a story beat, a new character, a new location around the corner. So even when I was struggling in combat, I wanted to keep going just to see what happened next. That pull, that narrative pull, is what makes this game special, I think. It's not just here is a room full of enemies, have fun. It is here is a room full of enemies and Jack just found out something huge. So push through this because you need to find out what it means. For a genre newcomer, that makes all the difference. Alright, let's talk about the part that I was most nervous about going in and ended up loving the most, the actual shooting. You start pretty simple. Pistol, your fist, standard buff, but then you start acquiring weapons and the game gets a lot more interesting. There is a shotgun, there is dynamite, there is the James gun, which is just a Tommy gun, and I love that they called it the James gun. There is a turpentine gun that corrodes enemies, there is a freeze ray, and then there is the devarnisher. The devarnisher shoots what basically looks like Elmer's glue, and when it hits an enemy, it melts the flesh right off their bones, just gone, and the skeleton just stands there for a second, blinking before it collapses. In a game that is all in black and white with cartoon characters, that should be disturbing. It is instead the funniest thing I have ever seen in a video game. The death animations in general are incredible. You blow someone up with dynamite, they turn into a pile of ash, and then two little cartoon eyes blink out of the ash like they are gone. but they are still there, just Ash now with eyes looking confused about it. I was laughing at these for the entire game every time, never got old. Jack himself moves really well. You've got a double jump, a dash, you can spin your tail to hover in the air for a second, which sounds silly and is incredible in practice. And there is a slide. For a genre I'd never really played, the movement clicked for me really fast. There is a flow to it. Once you get comfortable, you start chaining moves together and feeling genuinely cool, which for someone who has never played an FPS like this is a really good sign. The environments you're moving through are also fantastic. The harbor, a haunted village. Yes, there is a haunted village. A movie studio with its own little mini games, an underground network of tunnels. Each area has a completely distinct visual personality, even within the black and white art style. You never feel like you are running through the same space twice. And the soundtrack? The entire game is scored with big band jazz, bebop drum solos, saxophones going absolutely unhinged during combat sections, and you can actually add a vinyl scratch effect to the audio so it sounds like you are listening through an old gramophone. I had that turned on the whole time, sounded incredible. So between all the shooting, there is the detective side of things. You find clues, they get pinned to Jack's corkboard automatically. So between all the shooting, there is the detective side of things. You find clues, they get pinned to Jack's corkboard automatically, and the game generally uses them to point you where to go next. If I'm being honest, the detective mechanics are the lightest part of the game. You're not really solving anything yourself. Jack kind of intuits the connections for you, and part of me wishes it went deeper. Let me actually connect the dots. Let me choose who to question next. Give me a little more of that LA Noir energy, you know? But, and this is important, it never feels like a problem while you are actually playing because the pacing is so good. The detective sections give you breathing room after the combat. They let the story breathe, and then something happens that sends you back into action, and you are grateful for that break. The hub world between missions is also really nicely done. You've got Jack's office, a bar run by John Brown, who is a shrew and a genuinely great character, a weapon upgrade shop where Tammy works her magic, and a general store, and there is a baseball card minigame at the bar that I will not pretend I didn't spend way too much time on. It is this little card game where you are pitching and batting using different player cards and ability cards. It is just in there, and it is fun. That is very funny to me. Coming back to the hub after each mission resets the rhythm of the game beautifully. It feels like coming home between jobs, which is exactly what it's supposed to feel like. Look, I've spent most of this video telling you how much I love this game, and I meant all of it. But I'm also not going to pretend it's flawless because that doesn't help anyone. The shotgun. The shotgun sounds like a Nerf gun. I don't know what happened. The visual effect is brutal. Things explode, heads come off. It's genuinely violent in a very funny cartoon way. And then the sound is like psh, like someone stepping on a ketchup packet. It is the one weapon that never felt as good as it looked. The detective sections, like I said, could be deeper. I want to actually be a detective. Let me think. Let me fail. Let me go. Oh wait, I was wrong about who did it. There is a version of this game where the investigation side is a full puzzle system, and that version would be incredible. What we got is good, just a little light. And occasionally the game leans very hard on the everything is a cheese reference humor, which is charming, genuinely, but there are moments where you have just heard 17 cheese puns in a row and you kind of want one scene to just be sincere and quiet without someone swearing on their Momo's cottage cards. The game could trust its dramatic moments a little more, but, and I want to be really clear, none of this stopped me from having a great time. None of it broke the game for me. These are the notes I'd put in the suggestion box. These are the notes I'd put in the suggestion box, not reasons to walk out the door. Okay, here is where we land. Mouse-Pi for Hire is one of those games that feels like it shouldn't exist. A first game from a small studio in a niche genre with an art style that is this labor-intensive, hand-drawn, frame by frame, every single character animated by hand, and it is this good? The art direction is some of the best I've seen in years. Full stop. The story is smarter and darker than the cartoon aesthetic suggests. The jazz soundtrack is phenomenal. Troy Baker is doing the best work of his career in a game about mice, which is a sentence I did not expect to write. The death animations will make you laugh every single time. The hub world feels like home, and the whole thing comes together into something that feels genuinely special. I want to go back to Mouseburg. I want more cases. I want to know what happens to the characters I spent 16 hours with. That is the best sign I know. Alright guys, that's Mouse-Pi for Hire. If you watched all the way to the end, genuinely thank you. It means everything. Drop a like if you enjoyed it. It is the easiest thing you can do to help this channel, and I appreciate every single one. Subscribe if you are new around here. I've got a lot more coming, and I think you are going to like what is next. And leave a comment. Have you played this? Are you planning to? Are you someone like me who had never touched a boomer shooter and is now completely hooked because of a cartoon mouse detective? I want to hear from you. I'm Dan. This is Dan2D Reviews. See you in the next one.